everyone, and welcome to the Dare to See Us online book club. My name is Jabulile Makapela, and today we are going to be reading with Louisa Zondo. Today's session is going to be slightly different because we're not going to be reading from the Womaniko storybook, and we do have a guest speaker today. So for those of you who do not know what the book club is about, it's basically an online space for women to come together to give voice to their stories and to empower one another through the lived experiences that happen within the context of the world of work. I'm going to quickly read Louisa's bio, and then we're going to start with the reading. So Louisa Zondo joined the Oxfam South Africa Board of Directors in 2014, a non-practicing advocate of the High Court of South Africa. Louisa has more than 3 decades of experience in public interest law, social justice, human rights development, constitution making, regulatory institution leadership, and corporate leadership. The roles she served in include Deputy Executive Director of the Secretariat of the South African Constitutional Assembly, the founding CEO of the South African Human Rights Commission, Secretary of the Preparatory Commission for the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty Organization in Vienna, Austria, CEO of the National Nuclear Regulator in South Africa, Trustee of the National Research Foundation, Member of the National Advisory Council on Innovation, General Counsel of South African Airways, and General Manager at SASO. A dedicated mother of 4 adult sons and a captivated grandmother of 4, Louisa holds deep passion for and commitment to the transformation of lives with very particular focus on women, children, and young people. So Louisa, for those who do not know, what is the Oxfam Reclaiming Power Women's Work and Inequality in South Africa report all about?
Thank you very much. Thank you for the introduction. Yeah, the report is quite a groundbreaking piece of work which inspires South Africa to start understanding what the world that we are living in is about. So this was almost a 2-year process to come to the production of the Inequality report, which involved movements across the board. It had participation of women in the feminist movement. It had participation of labor movements, people in the informal economic sector, a cross-section of participants, gender, non-binary formations, and people in a whole lot of social justice, human rights movements participated in this. The intention was to bring this information about what happens to shape our lives, especially from the landscape of the economy. What are we grappling with? And it was presented in a way that centers the stories of the people who are impacted by poverty and inequality directly. And so the report has a lot of information, but it then opens up the opportunity for us to turn that information into knowledge by seeing it in the context of our lived experiences. Yeah. So the stories are told there, the stories of women are told there.
Thank you. Thank you. And I love that you say that the stories of women are told there, because we as well here at Womaniko, we know we're all about documenting these stories and compiling them and putting them out there, you know. And finally, I think there's a sense of power in being able to document those stories so they don't just end up as just stories, you know? And so we're going to be reading from, Louisa's going to be reading from page 21 of the report, and it is available online. So Louisa, over to you.
Thank you very much. Indeed, the report is available online, and the urging is for us to engage with it in order for us to find spaces and opportunity to make use of the knowledge that we glean from the stories that are told there. So I'll read the story that Kgotatso has told. Kgotatso is a retail worker. And it goes, I work in sales. My work involves selling gym membership to customers at one of the big shopping malls. I have been unemployed for over 3 years. And I was placed in my current occupation by one of these youth development agencies. I never knew the real extent to which people walk past and through you when you are trying to sell them something. It was especially difficult when people don't really know how to place me, when they do not know what I am. I know this because I see how they interact with my colleagues who are not like me. My typical day at work includes so many indignities that I and the other women face. Things are so difficult there that to even talk about our challenges with each other is almost impossible. We are watched how long we talk to each other, how much time we spend on our phones, how we are smiling or not smiling. We cannot drink water on the floor. We have to be searched each time we leave and enter the shop. There's also drama when I need to be searched, because I'm somewhere in between. I'm not a man, neither am I a woman. I also don't identify with either, and no one will listen to me insist on what is comfortable. We declare everything in our bags and pockets every day. The day it shocked me the most was when I got into trouble for not declaring my tampons. I had them in my pocket and they were loose like coins. I did not imagine that I could be threatened with arrest just because I did not want to tell people that I was menstruating. I was 5 years old when I heard the word lesbian for the first time. I was sitting with my dad and he was having a beer. We were both watching Brenda Fassie on TV. The interviewer asked Mabrr a question and she said, I'm a lesbian. I was fascinated by this word and asked what it meant. After it was explained to me, I then said to my father, well, that's what I am. I did not and still am unable to comprehend for myself an attraction and a love for men. Many of my dearest and closest friends growing up and now are men. But to be in a romantic and sexual relationship with them feels unnatural to me. Growing up and finding more girls like me felt really good. But by that, I mean girls who, according to others, dress like boys and like other girls. Being different can be very lonely and dangerous. I remember in 2007, after the cases of Sizakele and Salome, 2 lesbians who were brutally murdered and raped were reported in the media, my parents were so mad at me for the rumors that they were hearing on the streets. They were so mad, asking me if I am what people say I am, a lesbian. It almost felt like they were asking me if I was going to burden them with this too, knowing that we already live lives of struggle at home. My grandmother, father, aunts, and brothers and sisters live in the same household. I am the primary provider and have never in my life had a job that had paid me enough to survive. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of joy in my family. My favorite thing at home is hot summer days when we bring out the music and everybody talks really loudly over the music, with us breaking into awkward dance moves when the spirit moves us. My dreams are really not that huge. I want to build my grandmother a bathroom, to work in an environment where my dignity is respected and I'm paid a living wage, and to be able to live and love freely. Okay, I want millions too. I have a university degree that I would like to sell for money. I haven't been able to use it, and I still owe NSFAS over 200,000 for it, rand for it. I did everything I was supposed to do. I worked really hard for that degree. I was ill for most of it. I went back to school after the illness had forced me to drop out, and I was in a class older than my classmates. And I went back to school without any other safety net. It is really strange that even then, I know that I'm still better than so many of my counterparts that I went to school with. You see, of us children who went to township schools, very few of us make it to university, let alone get whatever qualification we studied for. I got the degree, and I still don't have a job that can meet my basic needs. The way I look is something I'm always so conscious of, except for when I'm in queer spaces. Interviews are generally anxiety-inducing, and you should see how interviewers get when I walk in a shirt and a tie, and how their heads get into a spin when they see the breasts under my shirt. It would be really funny if I didn't know that fitting in is a prerequisite for many jobs. Being an organizer is really important for me to remain hopeful. Understanding why the world works how it does, and that it's not my fault as an individual, is so important to remember whenever I feel stuck and despondent. But I really would like to catch a break. I don't know how that will happen with so much seemingly stacked against me. Being Black, being woman, being queer, and having no wealth to fall back on. Maybe we should pause and take in Kgotatso's story. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. I think I've read the story a number of times, and only today is it sinking in that this is the reality of so many Black young children, young people. You know, you go to school and you study, but yet you still don't even get a job that pays you well, and you cling onto this job for dear life because you're trying to provide for your family. You know, and it's just it's a sad reality, to say the least. It's a sad reality.
Yeah.
And I'm sure as you were reading, there were many themes that you were able to pick up on. And I just want to just list some of the themes that I've noted, and I will pose the question as to what are some of the themes that stood out the most for you, and we'll just go into discussion about those. I think for me, I would say the one theme that really stood out for me was that there was this expectation that employers have of the employees, that the human aspect should sort of be left at the door, and that they should display some form of professionalism. So again, in the story, we see how they were expected to always be smiling, to be friendly, and that's obviously that's linked to it displaying a level of professionalism. Again, how they were not expected to drink water on the floor. Then we see the theme of sexual discrimination pop up again, and that, for those who don't know, is defined as treating an individual unfavorably based on a person's failure to conform to gender stereotypes. It includes treating an individual less favorably because of that individual's sexual orientation or gender identity or perceived sexual orientation or gender identity. We see heteronormative dress codes being imposed on non-binary employees. We see the struggles of showing up authentically in the world of work. We see the income inequality again pop up again in the story of Kgotatso. And we see gender-based discrimination, which described by ILO occurs when an individual expresses their identity and sexuality in ways that do not conform to behavior and expectations traditionally associated with their sex. So I would just really like to know from you, what are some of the key themes that stand out from Kgotatso's story?
Thanks a lot, Sissy. You've actually identified the key themes, but I'd like to just elaborate on them, because those are the key themes that emerge. There's a huge element of human dignity that comes out in there, and it's not about professionalism. You see, we very often get caught in the trap of the dominant narrative, which tends to present these elements of dehumanizing people and subjecting them to hatred simply because they are different, simply because they are not wealthy, simply because they come from some sort of marginality and vulnerability, which is created by the dominant class, the elites anyway, and they create this narrative that all of this is actually all good. It's based on very objective circumstances and requirements of professionalism, and this is required in the workplace. No, it is hatred for the poor, the Black, the woman, the gender non-conforming, all those who are regarded as the other in an economic system that embeds certain fundamental principles of money and money making as the norms of society. And so what Kgotatso's story throws up starkly and calls on us to be always aware of is that there is nothing noble in othering. There is nothing noble in demeaning, in erasing others, in eliminating their voice, in dehumanizing. It's really tyrannical. And we know these shops. We've been to we go to them every day. We know even these shops that seek to even dehumanize us when and they're not located everywhere. You go to a Checkers in Sandton, nobody's checking your bag when you come out. You go to a Checkers in Alexander, you don't go out before somebody checks your bag and your sleep. And these are notions of the hatred that is visited upon the poor, those who are regarded as poor, and those who are regarded as other, and not in the mainstream of the elite. So that's the dominant thing, the human dignity, and the intersection of inequality that comes out in this story it's amazing. It's she enumerates these challenges that she says she doesn't see herself overcoming. She says, I'm Black, I'm a woman. and I am gender non-binary, and I don't have wealth. When those intersect, even what is generally put across as a narrative that education is an equalizer has no space. And so we cannot rely on these institutionalized ways of thinking and ways of being to cause change in the lives of many, many who experience what Kgotatso experiences. In South Africa, basically, you have estimations that about 10% are in the elite wealthy a grouping, and then you'd have about 75% in the middle class, and you'll end up with more than 50% that are living in abject poverty. What does it say for our society? We can't rely on these institutions that are created to perpetuate that picture of inequality in society. Yeah.
Thank you for that. And I think, again, and this is something we've touched on a number of occasions, is that you see the way in which these things happen in very subtle ways, and it sort of becomes entrenched in company culture. Again, you see how the legislation is there to basically safeguard employees, but in most instances, it doesn't work. It's not effective. It's there, yes, but it really doesn't look out for the employee. And people who are then on the receiving end of this are mostly young, Black, non-binary women, I guess.
Yeah.
And yes.
Yeah. No, it very much is the case. And there's a point not to be missed in Kgotatso's story. She says, I got placed in this job by one of those youth development agencies. Now imagine if we had a different way of considering how change happens. And we have these youth development agencies, and they are minded to actually put their organizing power, their convening power to use such that the places where they place young people for work are placed under an obligation to actually be transformative, to actually give effect to the Constitution, to actually see the young people that come into those places. The campaign that Womxn works on is called hashtag Dare to See Us. This is exactly what it is. Even this inequality report that Oxfam South Africa provides comes under that huge tag of even it up. Even it up. There is so much inequality, and the economic system in so many of its facets continues to capture us and draw us into it, and we become complicit, and we become participants, and we revel in aspects of it without realizing that it all contributes to millions and millions of Kgotatsos who fall in the more than 55% of South Africans who live in poverty.
So I think we're both in agreement that there are intersectionalities between sexual discrimination and income inequality. And I think one of the questions that I really want to ask is, how does those intersectionalities serve as stumbling blocks for a Jabu who's just entering the job market, for a Kgotatso who's already in the job market? And I get the sense that Kgotatso has given up. She says, well, the I want millions part is almost like an afterthought. you know. So how do those intersectionalities serve as stumbling blocks for young Black women?
Yeah. Maybe we should start with this framing in order for us to sit with that question and continue interrogating the actual lived experience and keep on drawing lines to what this actually means. When we come to realize that market inequality, labor inequality is the biggest connector or trigger of all forms of inequality, whether it is race, gender, all forms of inequality, whether it applies to inequality in access to any service and facility across agriculture, energy, transport, anything. The economic factor is a deep, deep connector to the woes of inequality and the associated poverty that is linked to that. And so when one thinks then of how the realities of young people coming from backgrounds of deprivation and poor backgrounds would struggle to get to that place where they also can relate to intergenerational class mobility. Kgotatso tells us her story in very subtle ways, tells us that there's no hope for that for her. And yet she does have dreams. And she says they're not huge. She almost says the millions tongue in cheek because they are such a far-fetched picture for her. But she says, you know, I do have dreams. I have dreams that are related to practical needs. I'm not asking anybody to steal more than 1.5 trillion rand for me over a period of a few years, such as we have experienced in South Africa over a period of just about 5 years, an estimation in excess of 1.5 trillion, and it continues, has been stolen just between 2014 and 2019. What is it stolen for? For individuals in the top 10% to live the life they're living. Kgotatso is not even concerned about getting to any place close to that. And yet, what young people do experience is the disconnect. She talks about we are not even able to talk about the challenges at work. So you are alone, basically. You wake up that early morning, you board your transport, or if you ride a bicycle, you're riding that bicycle. If you're walking, as I've seen many people on highways in the morning walking, you're walking your way to work. You are alone. You are not going to be allowed to find camaraderie, comradeship, solidarity with anybody. You are alone on that burden. And you're always trying to avoid the trouble of losing this job. Kgotatso tells of a nasty experience. She was threatened with the loss of the job, not only loss of job, but with arrest, because she would not find it in herself to personally dehumanize herself by telling somebody that she's menstruating at that time. The workplace and its norms become such an oppressor for young people, not only young people, for women in general, for poor people who are working in those environments. So this platform that you are creating in Womxn is so important because, look, we're chatting about a story, and it's coming alive. And that I don't know how many times just by walking through Kgotatso's stories, I've broken down in tears because it's hard to take it in. But that is the inspiration that we must get, which causes us to then go and look at how we connect, we mobilize, we get involved in campaigns. There are many campaigns that are erupting now. Austerity is causing our lives to dissipate, and COVID has made it even more stuck how we are suffering. It's made it so much clearer how intractable the current system of managing and running the economy and seeing the economy and how it cannot be sustained. We just need to be organizing differently. We need to be building different values. We need to be organizing our work and our livelihoods in different ways. We need to recognize the power that can be created by us not being defeated by the separation in the workplace. Kgotatso says she's an organizer, and that gives a hope. Let's contribute to more organizing and to the outcomes of the work that Kgotatso do to be resounding in our lives.
Thank you so much for that. I like to think of, you hear transformation, and that's all in well. But I like to think of transformation going hand in hand with authenticity.
Yeah.
And again, that's something that we're big advocates of allowing people to be authentic in the workplace, allowing them to do their work in ways that are authentic to them and real to them. Yeah. And we see again, and not just in Kgotatso's story, but on an everyday basis, we see how women, how the people of the LGBT community have to sort of change themselves and stray away from being authentic as a means to either protect themselves, as a means to risk losing their jobs. And I think I've really been grappling about how do, in the most practical sense, how do we advocate for workplaces that allow people to be their authentic selves? Again, Kgotatso says she, for instance, doesn't dress so the point about the heteronormative dress code.
Yes.
How does the way I dress mean that I'm not capable to do the job that is required of me? So how do we advocate for spaces that allow people to be their authentic selves?
Yeah. This is the striving that we must not let go of. Because unless we apply feminist principles where we are constantly turning the telescopes onto ourselves and observing our thoughts, our actions, our attitudes, to a host of things, and seeing how we, even in subtle ways, without our awareness being heightened, how we are informed and influenced and directed by the subliminal and constant messages that are given to us about how we must be. And so even the most open-minded person who is a progressive and has magnanimity in their life and they are really good people, would have the duty to be constantly aware of the creeps of biases in the way they lead life every day, every moment of life. Now imagine an institution that is not even bothered to be aware of all of this and how tyrannical it is. And so the opportunity for voices to constantly be coming together to raise the actual costs of silencing, excluding, and erasing the authenticity of people who are in that environment is probably going to be very useful, because there are costs. Because once you silence the true me, you're never going to benefit from my creativity. You're never going to benefit from my awareness. You're not going to be fully benefiting from the contribution that I could make from an authentic point of view to the enterprise that I'm participating in as a worker, as an employee, as a party to it in any other form. So there is a cost of exclusion. There is a huge cost, and it's these inefficiencies that need to be starkly brought up. When we bring up the information, we translate it into knowledge that practically speaks to these big establishments about how unwise and ineffective it is to exclude the use of natural energy, and they exclude the use of green and more sustainable ways of doing business, of accomplishing the outcomes. How adverse it is, and really unsustainable, to be only profit driven. And yet businesses that are able to temper that, they last, they live. So yeah, that's, sorry, it's a long response to the question, but it is absolutely critically important to emphasize that diversity and inclusion is the only way humans and the world at large, and it's all of the beings in the world thrive. The word ecosystem, brought to its natural meaning, should be telling us through and through that we can't be channeled to be monolithic and have only one narrative. We have to be open and inclusive and just and loving. Oh, that word love, so important in all human endeavor, actually. Yeah.
Thank you. And I just want to add another word. I think compassion as well. As soon as you get to work, it's almost as if people just lose that compassion. You know, there's no love, there's no compassion, and yet you are expected to give 110%, yet you receive nothing back. I think I've asked every question I could possibly ask, considering that this is a 30-minute session, but I'd just like to ask if you have any closing remarks, any final words that you'd like to share before finally close off this session.
No, I want to thank you so much for this platform. Thank you for the initiative of establishing and bringing to life Womxn. It is such a breath of fresh air. Many of us work in these institutions that are sort of constrained by their historic way of being, and it's hard to live out the sense of true meaning and connection. And so I'm truly inspired by the work that you do. I do hope that the women who engage with this work and the stories that are shared will allow themselves to be inspired to participate in various campaigns that move towards eradicating the core elements of this inequality. Income inequality, wealth inequality. We have to clamor for the policies in this country to start shifting towards expressly opening space and enabling the opportunity for inequality to start getting eradicated. We are the most unequal country in the world.
Well, thank you so much for agreeing to read and for your input. It's really appreciated. Thank you very much. And my key takeaway from this is that the work is not easy. The work that we do is not easy, but we need to start somewhere. And that's we need to organize as not just women, but men need to also join in, and we all need to organize. If we want to break the cycle of inequality, we all need to do our part. So thank you very much for doing your part as well in joining us on this platform. Greatly appreciated.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a lovely
All the best. Same to you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye.